there to be no question remaining about the fact that the President has nothing to hide.
If President Nixon had nothing to hide, why did nobody know? In the early 1970s, the United States was divided. The Vietnam War had shattered trust in the government. Protest movements filled the streets. Americans were angry, frustrated, and uncertain about the future. At the center of it all stood one man, Richard Nixon. Nixon promised law and order. He promised stability, and in 1972, he looked unstoppable. But behind the scenes, his administration was carrying out illegal activities that would become one of the greatest political scandals in American history.
And I want to end the war for another reason. I want to end it so that the energy and dedication of you, our young people, now too often directed into bitter hatred against those responsible for the war, can be turned to the great challenges of peace, a better life for all Americans.
This is the story of Watergate. The break-in, the cover-up, and the downfall of the president. President Nixon developed a deep fear of political enemies and the media. He believed journalists, protesters, and Democrats were trying to destroy his presidency. To fight back, Nixon's administration created a secret group known as the Plumbers. Their job was to stop leaks of classified information and gather intelligence on Nixon's opponents. Key members included G. Gordon Liddy, E. Howard Hunt, John Ehrlichman, and H.R. Handelman. At the same time, Nixon's re-election campaign, officially called the Committee to Re-elect the President, or CREEP, became obsessed with winning at any cost. The administration used dirty political tricks, illegal surveillance, and secret operations against opponents. And eventually, those actions led directly to the Watergate break-in. On June 17, 1972, 5 men were arrested inside the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate complex. Burglars had wiretapping equipment, cameras, and cash connected to the Nixon's re-election campaign. At first, the break-in seemed small, but reporters soon realized something bigger was happening.
That overzealous workers in his own re-election committee may have been involved in the Watergate bugging caper. And for the first time, the president admitted that the White House has investigated on its own. And he says that it found no one now employed by his administration to have been involved in any way.
2 young journalists from the Washington Post began investigating. Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein. They discovered connections between the burglars and Nixon's administration. A secret source known as Deep Throat helped guide the investigation. Decades later, Deep Throat was revealed to be Mark Phelps. As the investigations grew, Nixon and his staff tried to cover up everything, but money was paid to the burglars to stay silent. The FBI investigations were obstructed, evidence was hidden, but the cover-up became the worst than the crime itself. In 1973, the Senate launched the official Watergate hearings. Millions of Americans watched the hearings live on television as former White House officials testified against the president. One of the most important witnesses was John Dean. Dean revealed that Nixon had participated in the cover-up. Then came the biggest discovery of all. White House aide Alexander Butterfield revealed that Nixon had secretly recorded conversations inside the Oval Office.
Very conscious of that kind of thing. We had quite an elaborate setup at the White House for the collection and preservation of documents and of things which transpired in the way of business of state.
On whose authority were they installed, Mr. Butterfield?
On the President's authority by way of Mr. Haldeman and Mr. Higbee.
Those tapes could prove whether Nixon was guilty. Congress demanded the tapes, but Nixon refused. Then on October 20th, 1973, came the Saturday Night massacre. Nixon ordered Attorney General Elliot Richardson to fire Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox. Richardson refused and resigned. So did Deputy Attorney General William Rutherford. Eventually, Cox was fired anyway. The public was outraged. Americans began to believe the president was abusing his power and acting above the law.
No more social consciousness than a cat. He has never been a man of principle in my view. I've known him since the Second World War when I shared a tent with him on Green Island in 1944.
Finally, in 1974, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously in United States versus Nixon that Nixon had to hand over the tapes. The recordings proved Nixon had participated in the cover-up almost immediately after the break-in.
Anti-Semitism is stronger than we think, you know. It's unfortunate, but this has happened to the Jews. It happened in Spain. It's happened in Germany. It's happening, and now it's going to happen in America if these people don't start behaving. It may be they have a death wish. You know, that's been the problems with our Jewish friends for centuries.
Well, they've always been, through the Bible at least, God's timepiece, and He has judged them from generation to generation, and yet used them, and they've kept their identity.
Abortions are necessary, I know that. You know, that's where you have a black and a white.
Facing impeachment and certain removal from office, Nixon made history. On August 8, 1974, he announced his resignation to the nation.
Broad and prosperity without inflation at home. Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow. Vice President Ford will be sworn in as president at that hour in this office.
The next day, Nixon became the first and only U.S. president to resign. Vice President Gerald Ford became president and later pardoned Nixon, preventing him from facing criminal charges. Watergate changed America forever. After the scandal, Congress increased oversight of the president, new laws were passed to limit abuses of power, strengthened campaign finance rules, and increased government transparency. But perhaps the biggest change was public trust. Before the Watergate, many Americans believed presidents generally acted in the country's best interest. After Watergate, skepticism toward government exploded. And decades later, comparisons between Nixon and Donald Trump have become common. Both presidents were accused of abusing executive power, attacking the media, and attempting to obstruct investigations. Both also claimed investigations against them were politically motivated witch hunts. Like Watergate, recent investigations involving Trump led to congressional hearings, intense media coverage, and debates about presidential accountability. Still, Watergate legacy remains clear. It's shown that no president is above the law. It strengthened congressional oversight, and it permanently changed how Americans view their government. More than 50 years later, Watergate is no longer just a scandal from the past. It is a warning about power, corruption, and the importance of democracy itself.